I don't think he's where Sean Porter was at this point in his career. I would say Sean Porter was more sort of a gatekeeper, high risk, low reward. How much longer are they going to say that? Hopefully we get the Terence Crawford and Errol Spence fight very soon, and then that'll open up some doors to some of these other guys to get shots.
What's good, everybody? What's good? It's your boy Cardinal Bud Crawford, or E.S. Red, if that's what you want to call me. And we are back for another one. Alright, y'all, we got the new topic. Canelo Alvarez. Patience is the key to Errol Spence Jr. beating Terence Bud Crawford. Alright, y'all, so what could Canelo mean by patience is the key? Well, we all know that Terence Crawford is a speed style fighter, combination puncher. His goal is to outwork you or outland you and then overwhelm you with combination punches. I think it's the complete opposite for Errol Spence. He's more of a breakdown fighter, gets to a certain position, tries to hit you with hard body shots, just hard shots, period, trying to break your body down and get you in that deep water and get you out of there. So how does patience play a role between those two fighters? More specifically, how does it play a role for Errol Spence Jr. to beat Terence Crawford using patience? Well, I would say that Errol Spence is already a patient fighter because he does have that breakdown power. He does use that breakdown style and that body punching style to win fights. I would say that 90% of his game plan is already using the ring, being patient, slow walking your opponent, and landing hard shots. Now, the only place he could be more patient would be conserving his power for later on in the fight. But I'm not sure if that's even necessary for a fighter like Terence Crawford because of the flaw of being a speed style fighter. I would say the flaw of speed fighting is that you normally gas yourself kind of early. Now, there are speed fighters that can go the whole 12 rounds throwing these super ridiculous punch outputs for the entire fight. Manny Pacquiao was one of those guys. It wasn't until later on in his career where punch output started to affect him a little bit more. But, you know, early in his career, he could throw combinations for rounds and rounds and rounds. And by the time, you know, the 10th, 11th, 12th round would come along, he done already beat the crap out of his opponent or knocked him out. So he wasn't even making it to the 12th round in a lot of those fights because of his high output, just overwhelming guys. So it wasn't even necessary for him to extend his stamina out that far. But I do think with a fighter like Errol Spence and a fighter like Terence Crawford, you want to make sure you're able to sustain for 12 rounds. And a fighter like Terence Crawford, we don't know if he can go a full, I mean, he's never had to do like a full 12 round battle. He's either overwhelming guys or he's just way better than those guys, or the guys that he's fighting are past their prime and should have been retired already. So the caliber of fight you're used to seeing Terence Crawford in anyway, you don't normally get to see him in an extended fight for a full 12 rounds. So it's hard to judge. Well, does he need some extra stamina? Does he need to save combinations in the early rounds to make it to the later rounds? Does his power carry for 12 rounds when he's fighting a bigger, stronger fighter who can absorb more punches? There's a lot of question marks surrounding Terence Crawford. But I do think, especially with him putting on this new weight and bulking up, that I feel like that's a sign of him wanting to move to 154, but he could be thinking too quickly. He could be like, okay, well, I'm going to put this weight on now to get my body used to carrying an extra weight because I know I'm going to beat Errol Spence. But what happens if you lose to Errol Spence? And it's the weight that is the reason that you lost. You know, you could actually be thinking too quickly or overlooking something, and it ends up biting you in the butt when you actually face off with this guy. So I would hope that, you know, Terence Crawford could use patience in the way that he doesn't go all in the first 5 rounds. You know, the first 5 rounds, kind of use them as filler rounds. You know, feel Errol Spence out, test out certain punches. You know, see how he's going to approach the first half of the fight, and then in the second half of the fight, going into the third portion and fourth portion of the fight, then you start to open up. Then you start to throw those 3, 4, 5, 6 punch combinations, and then you start to move and utilize the ring and try to overwhelm him with foot speed and hand speed and movement. Definitely angles, you know, the angles that Manny Pacquiao used to use. I think that's a key for Terence Crawford. Being a speed fighter, why wouldn't you take an attribute for one of the best speed fighters in the history of boxing, which is Manny Pacquiao, and those angles he used to use, because they worked against bigger, stronger opponents, and they made those bigger, strong opponents look really bad in the process. As far as Errol Spence goes, I do think that he already has the intangibles to beat Terence Crawford, and I don't think it's going to be too difficult for him. I think patience is a key. He's going to have to, you know, when Terence Crawford does go into those 3, 4, 5, 6 punch combos, he's going to have the patience to, you know, move around, throw his shots, try to hit his body, slow him down, maybe even punch him in the arms, shoulders, forearms, you know, all that type of stuff to slow down his punch output, and definitely cut off the ring, utilize the ring himself, because we know that Errol Spence is not a speed fighter in any way. Does everything at his own pace, methodically, paces himself, and you know, that's smart man. That's how you don't run out of stamina at critical points of the fight, you know, by being patient, by going where you want to go, throwing the punches you want to throw, staying in your defensive stance, using the jab to keep your opponent off of you. All of those things, I think, are going to play out and bode well for Errol Spence Jr. when this fight finally does come to fruition. And which one of these guys is going to be more patient? Which one of these guys is going to use their boxing IQ to win the fight? I think that outthinking the opponent is going to be the key, the biggest key to victory here, but patience will be the second key. Outthinking your opponent and using your boxing IQ. You know, being smart in a boxing ring should always be what carries you to victory. So using your ring IQ to carry you to victory, I think, is going to be a big attribute for whoever wins this fight. I think that's it for now. Yeah, I'm done rambling. Hit that like button for me. Share, subscribe. Holler at me on all social media platforms, Facebook, Instagram, YouTube. You're more than likely to get a response on the tube, so holler at me over there if you want a response. It's your boy Cardinal Bud Crawford, or E.S. Red, if that's what you want to call me. And we are live.
I'm one of a kind.